Hello, my study buddies, painting buddies, workmates and procrastinators. Welcome back to the studio. Whatever it is that you're up to, let's do it together for the next hour. Let's keep each other focused, let's keep each other accountable, and above anything else, let us keep each other company. I'd love to know, as always, what you're up to for the next hour below, so do leave a comment, but otherwise, let's crack on with today's painting. Okay, so today I'm working on a nice kind of snowy woodland scene. I'm working on Strathmore toned mixed media paper in the colour tan, and I'm using Holbein gouache mainly, and just the Winsor & Newton yellow ochre because I've run out of my Holbein yellow ochre, and this one, Schminker white. You always need a big tube of white when you're using gouache. So yeah, I'm just gonna get started. I'm using a reference. I will have that link below along with everything else that I mention in this video. And it feels like ages since I've done like a chatty video while painting, so forgive me if I'm a little bit rusty. With my landscapes, I generally start with the sky or just with like the furthest off in the distance thing that I can start with, and then I will build on top as I go. And I'm hoping that there isn't too much glare from the paint on the camera. Still just trying to figure out the lighting situation in this room. It's also weird not using washi tape today and just going with like a natural border, but I want a more like rough feel to this one, or more sort of rustic and just more of a casual one. So I don't know how much has changed since we last spoke. Probably nothing, really, let's be honest. Not a lot has changed this year. We have pretty much just come out of our second lockdown here, lockdown 2.0, and we're still in quite heavy restrictions in the lead up to Christmas. But lockdown, the second one, was a lot easier than the first one. I think maybe because we knew what to expect this time, and I don't know, it was, but maybe because it's colder as well, it was a lot easier to just stay inside and embrace just being inside and getting cozy. I know a lot of people put their Christmas decorations up early, and I'm not surprised. I was really tempted to do ours as well, but they're up now, which is really nice. But yeah, another thing about our second lockdown was that it happened during November, which is when Ozzy and I will usually give up alcohol for a month, and we carried on with that this time, and it was interesting. I was really dreading it in the lead up to November, knowing that we'd be in lockdown and we wouldn't be drinking, because for the first lockdown we were drinking a lot, and I think that that's why this lockdown not drinking was so important, especially feeling how scared I was to be giving up drinking for a month. I think that was sign enough that I was going to need it. Just take a break and stop depending on alcohol to like unwind in the evening, or treating it as like a reward for a hard day. And it was so much easier than last time. It was really, really all right. And I would really recommend it for anyone who feels like they might need it, because I really appreciated it, and it went so quickly, even in lockdown. But yeah, it was really worthwhile. I can't say that I felt any physical benefits. Everything, all my friends have asked me if it's made a difference, but I think because I replaced alcohol with like chocolate, yeah, no real health benefits, but it was just nice to take a break, and I'm sure I saved a lot of money as well. And so in the meantime, during that lockdown, just spent a lot of time doing the same stuff, doing jigsaw puzzles. I had a really difficult one, the Japanese garden one that you saw in one of my vlogs. That took forever. That took weeks and weeks and weeks because all the pieces were essentially the same. So yeah, that took a really long time to get through. And then since then I've been working on a 2,000 piece puzzle of like an alpine scene, and it's a lot easier, but obviously because it's a lot bigger it takes longer. But yeah, still loving the jigsaws. If you haven't gotten the jigsaw train during this pandemic, I would really recommend it. It's a really nice way to spend your time. Like instead of staring at screens, which I'm still doing obviously, but like before I really wind down for the evening and spend the rest of my night in front of the telly, it's nice to do a little bit of puzzling. I forgot how difficult it can be sometimes to work on toned paper when you really need to apply paint more thickly to cover up the colour underneath, but I suppose that's part of the point. So for now I'm just sort of building up this background, trying to go from sky into clouds that sort of goes into a background of trees. And as always, there's really no rhyme or reason to the decisions I'm making. I'm just going with the flow, and we'll see how this turns out, you know. I don't really think it matters. I'm not striving for anything perfect. If it doesn't turn out how I want it to go, I can always start again. And I'm using still quite a limited palette. This is a palette that I use quite often. Prussian blue, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre and white. If you saw my Zorn palette video, I really enjoyed using those colours, and I want to find something in between this and that, because I still find that this palette gives me too much choice really, even though it's only a few colours. I really liked the muted look that the Zorn palette gave me, but I need to be able to have a blue in there somewhere, so I'm going to continue to experiment, see what I can come up with. I'm sure that the right palette is out there for me. I had quite a few good suggestions from you guys as well of different colour combinations that might work, so I'm looking forward to trying those all out. Back here I'm just trying to give a suggestion of snow on trees and branches. And I can always come back later on to tweak it if it needs it. So otherwise, during the last month or so, I've been spending a lot more time going on walks, which has been so good for me. It's been, just every single time I get out there, I think, why don't I do this more often? Because it's just getting fresh air and just moving. The first few times my body was really screaming at me, like, you need to do this more often. But over time, it's just become a really nice part of my day. I don't do it that often still, but when I do, it makes such a huge difference. And like, I have a few regular walking buddies, just people that I know I can call on whenever we need to do a distanced walk, of course, but just someone to chat with and catch up with. It's just a really nice way to still be seeing friends, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm very much over video chats. I've never been interested in like video calls and stuff, and while it was good for a little bit and really fun, I think, at the beginning of the first lockdown, I'm so over it now. So yeah, it's nice to be able to pop out here and there. That's something I definitely want to do more of next year, however things go. As long as we're allowed to still go on walks, I think that's something that I'll definitely need to embrace. Other than that, for setting goals for 2021, I'm still going to set some goals. I know quite a few people aren't, or just don't really feel confident in that, and that is fair enough, because, I mean, for example, I can't even remember all of my goals from for 2020, but I remember one of them was to see my friends more, and one of them was to get out more. So yeah, didn't really work out for me. So yeah, I understand why a lot of people aren't really interested in setting goals for 2021 yet. I think if this year has taught us anything, it's that things aren't always within our control, but there are goals that you can set that are more within your control. And so I'm just going to have a few things to strive for, just a few things to focus on even. And I'm confident that things are going to get a lot better next year, and hopefully quite soon. So it'll be nice to have some stuff to look forward to. one of the things that I've been working on recently is waking up earlier. My days are so different when I get up a couple of hours earlier, or just even an hour earlier. And if I can get myself moving, get my day going, if I have a good morning, I really feel like unstoppable. And it's crazy how much of a difference it makes to how much I get done and how I feel at the end of the day. But I've never been a morning person, and so I've just always struggled to keep up with a good morning routine. And especially this year, because my routine changes so often, because our situation changes so often, it's been hard to stick to it. So we're back in tier 3 now, which basically means that I don't even know anymore. For me, it just means I'm staying in pretty much all the time, and it means that Aussie's home now, probably till the new year, sometime in the new year. So I think we've got some time to figure out a good balance. Yeah, I think I'm hopeful that I can get my morning figured out, and then really everything else should follow. I can't really tell how this looks at the moment. I didn't really have a plan to begin with. I think it's just going to be one of those ones where I keep building and going back, jumping here, there and everywhere, trying to give the impression of depth. Maybe I'll do the ground next. I don't see why not. Especially while I've still got quite a lot of pure white down there. So I need to remember to lay it on quite thickly. So other than that, what I've been working on, mainly the studio redecoration video. That took quite a while to put together, to plan it and to film it and to edit it and all of that. So that took up quite a lot of my time, and I'm really, really happy with this space now. It really has made such a difference. I didn't think it would make as much of a difference as it has, but there is just a different feel in here, which I'm very grateful for. And you guys really enjoyed that video as well. So overall, it was just a lot of fun and a really worthwhile thing to do. Other than that, my shop is now empty. Everything is sold out, which I'm really happy about. I know that sometimes people want stuff in their shops over Christmas, and I've even had people asking for certain things, and it's such a shame that I can't provide what people want, like if they had gifts planned. But for me right now, I'm really pleased that it's just a good time to reflect on like what I want to restock, any new things that I want to bring in. I really like having that space now to curate what happens next in my shop, especially into the new year. I've also got a lot of back-end stuff to deal with Brexit. Like, I think there's a lot of business stuff that needs looking at, and like product stuff and customs and really boring stuff that's just going to need to be sorted before the new year. So I think it's good to have some time where I'm not sending stuff out, so that I know once I am sending stuff out again, I'm doing it properly. As I'm painting this now, I'm just trying to get some shadows in, because there's going to be some trees all along here, so it would be nice to, I think it'll give a good sense of like depth here. So I still have quite a bit to do over the next couple of weeks, just if I want to be able to take a week or so off over Christmas and maybe the first week of the new year, we'll see. So yeah, I'm going to have a busy next, I don't know, 9 days. It's the 16th today, so 8 days? I don't know. Depends when I want to stop working. Definitely not working on Christmas Day, but I don't see why I can't work up to then. Not like I've got anything else going on. But I do have, again, quite a bit to catch you up on in terms of what I've been watching and reading. So I suppose we'll just get straight to that now. So last time around I talked about reading American Dirt by Janine Cummings, and after that video went out I actually got a comment from Falconet who just mentioned some controversy around that book, and yeah, I really appreciate the lesson there, and also just how understanding that commenter was in like me not knowing those things. And essentially the book has come under some criticism for being a not so genuine representation of the Latin community struggle, and how, I don't know, the whole thing I believe is more sort of sensationalized and quite exploitative of a story that some people believe wasn't the author's story to tell. So yeah, I really appreciate getting that kind of insight from you guys, because obviously I just read whatever books I can find. I'm not like a booktuber. I don't research the books that I'm reading, and so I don't research them before I talk about them, which maybe into the new year I will start doing, because I don't want to recommend things to you guys that aren't or just anything that's going to be offensive to anyone. So I do really appreciate that commenter. That comment is actually pinned on that video, so if you want to read that explanation a better job than I did, that'll be there, because they also recommend a video review, nothing like sensational, nothing like crazy, but just someone that talks in more detail about why those issues have been brought up. So I definitely recommend, if you go back to my last hour in the studio video, it will be the comment at the top of that comment section. So since then, I've got, for the next book that I read, it's written, on my notes I've written the audiobook with the witches and water. That was because I couldn't remember the name of it, but I found out it's called Into the Water by Paula Hawkins, who wrote The Girl on the Train. I think this is her next book since then, and it's about, it's been quite a while since I read this now, since I listened to it, but it was about a woman who goes back to her old hometown, I guess, after the mysterious death of her sister, who she'd sort of lost contact with. And it's a town that has a history of almost persecution of women. It's like one of those witchcrafty towns. It's actually set somewhere in like Northumberland, so really north of England, north of like Newcastle, I think, really close to Scotland. And yeah, it just follows this woman trying to come to terms with the loss of her sister, and also you find out more about the stuff that her sister was researching, the history of the town. There's like a place called the Drowning Pool, where they would take the evil women back in those days and drown them, I guess. But it was interesting. The witchcraft, or like I say witchcraft because it's not really witchy, but it's, you know, Salem witch trials type witchcraft, the Crucible type like hysteria and like fakeness. That stuff's really interesting. I really liked the audiobook. I don't know if I'd be as interested in it if I'd actually read it as a book, but the audiobook I thought was done really well, because they have loads of different voice actors in it. Every chapter is narrated by a different person. I think there are like maybe 4 or 5 different points of view, and they've all got different accents and stuff. And like one of the characters is a teenage girl, and I think the actress that did that did a really good job of being an annoying teenager. I know some people really get bugged out by annoying voice actors in audiobooks, and I completely understand that, but I think they did a good job, especially with all the accents. As I said, it's like near Newcastle. and I'm sure there are some Scottish accents in it as well. And because I'm not from Newcastle or Scotland, I can't really judge the accents, but I know that they did a better job than I could have done. And yeah, just the changing perspectives in it. It's an interesting mystery to get to the bottom of. I can't remember it that clearly, but I did enjoy it. I know I went away from it feeling like it was worth the read. I don't think I've done a very good job of describing it. And if you hear that squeak, that is just my chair, I promise. Then I've been on a bit of a, what's it? I always have these mixed up. Non-fiction, not fact and fiction. Fact? Yeah, non-fiction. I've been on a bit of a non-fiction tip at the moment. So I first read Deep Work by Cal Newport, which I've had for ages and have been meaning to read. And I actually first listened to like a summary of it on Blinkist, where they like do like a short highlight reel basically of the most important information from the book. And from that I thought, yeah, I really would actually like to give that a read. And there are some really, really valuable insights in there. It's sort of about how you structure your workday and or just how you structure your time in general to get the most out of it and to concentrate. It's about social media and all that stuff, just the usual stuff, and emails. I think it's really well researched and definitely worth checking out if you're interested in making the most out of your time, out of your workday, regardless of what you do. One thing I will say is that I did find it quite boring, even though so much of it was useful and interesting in terms of the content and the information provided. The delivery for me didn't work, but I think that is just more of a personal thing. I think a lot of people would really connect with that book. I think it's laid out in a way that is quite easily digestible, I think, and you can tell that the author really cares about what he's researched and what he's talking about. You can just tell that a lot of time has gone into it. So I would 100% recommend it. And I think the only reason that I am not as enthusiastic about this book as I could be is that the next book I read was The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which just like blew that one out of the park. And that is more about like everything about habits, really, about forming habits, the sort of psychological stuff behind it. You get a lot of the science behind like how our brains work. And just reading that book, really, I saw a difference in writing styles, and I just think it's a case of Charles Duhigg's writing style in The Power of Habit being more to my taste. He's more of a storyteller, and that's why I do think it's down to taste, because I think a lot of people might read that kind of book and want him to get to the point or not be as interested in that side of things. But I really connected with that book a lot more just because it was laid out in a way that made sense to me as a reader. But yeah, The Power of Habit is definitely one of my favourite books of the year, I think. I learnt so much from that. And there's a lot that I already knew, but it's just the way that it's laid out is so eye-opening. And yeah, really, really fun read. Really good one. I will definitely be rereading that probably quite soon, even though I've only just finished it in like the last month or so. I would go back to that quite soon because I don't know, there's just so much useful stuff in there. I think it could really make a difference in both of those books could really make a difference in how I make the most of next year. Right, and then back to, we're bouncing around a bit. I have some like non-fiction and fiction. Next up, I read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, which I'd heard a lot about, and I think I was expecting something different, and because of that, I came out of it feeling a bit flat. But overall, it's a really good book. I think it's really well written. I think it's really interesting. It reminded me a lot of Big Little Lies, I think it was called, by Leanne Moriarty, which I read possibly earlier this year, just in the sense that you've got this young single mother who moves to like an affluent neighborhood where things are there's quite a facade of status, and I don't know, it's all very secretive, and there's just little things like gossip and things going on. And I believe Celeste Ng is from the community that she is writing about in this book. I didn't realise until afterwards that it's an actual real place called Shaker Heights. That it's a place that was designed really specifically with, like, your lawn has to be a certain length, and all the children can get to schools without having to cross a road. Like, everything has been really meticulously planned, and so the story is just, I don't know, some of it's about keeping up appearances. I won't spoil it, but it was interesting. I don't know why. I was expecting it to be a sort of psychological thriller, and I think that's why when I finished it, I was sort of like, oh, okay. But overall, it was pretty good. The only other issue I had was that it ended really abruptly, but I also think part of that is because I was reading it on Kindle. In Kindle, it said I had like, I don't know, 10% of the book left, and then it just ended. And that's because the last 10% was like the first chapter of a different book, which was kind of annoying. But yeah, so I thought I had more of that book to go, and it would have made sense to have more of that book. But yeah, I felt like I'd been left hanging by the end of it. This is really nerve-wracking now going in with these trees, but just have to be brave. You never know how it's going to go when you get to this part. But I can always paint over it if it goes wrong. Right, before we go any further, I'm going to take a quick break. I could do with a snack, I'm quite hungry. So get up, stretch your legs, or just have a little stretch if you want, get some water, and I'll see you back here in a second. All right, now we're getting to the books that I read more recently, so I'll probably have a bit more to say. I apologise if I'm very forgetful, so the stuff that I read even, I don't know, a month ago, I really don't remember that well. So hopefully I'll have a few better insights into some stuff that you might want to read sometime soon. And while I'm talking about those books, I'm going to carry on being brave with these trees. The good thing with trees is that you can just sort of make it up as you go along. Just hope for the best. So what was next? Oh, then I read a book called The Perfect Couple by Jackie Cabler. And that was about a young couple that move from London to Bristol, I think, and they just have this great life together, thinking about starting a family, you know, the usual. And then one day, the husband, I say that I'm better at remembering the more recent ones. I'm really just racking my memory of trying to remember what this book was about. The wife goes on a business trip. When she comes back, the house is spotless, but her husband isn't there, and over time he doesn't come back. She gets the police involved, and then it starts to come about that there's a serial killer in the area, possibly killing men that look surprisingly like her husband. And so as time goes on, he doesn't come back. There's a suspicion that he may have been killed, he may have been the next victim. But also, as the police are investigating his disappearance, they find that none of the neighbours have ever seen this man. They thought this woman moved in on her own. And there's actually no record of him ever being in Bristol. The new job he was meant to start there, he didn't. I need to try not to spoil this book because my mum read this before me, and I feel like the whole first half of the book she described to me in like her summary of the book. So I'll leave it there. But it's quite interesting. I thought it had a really, really promising start. I was really interested to begin with. Over time, my interest sort of waned, but it kept me enough to want to know what was going to happen. So yeah, I'd just check it out. I think a lot of you might enjoy it. It was a nice, it was almost the psychological thriller that I was looking for. I don't know why I've been in such a mood for the psychological stuff. Okay, and then back to my non-fiction. I read Atomic Habits by James Clear, and this is another one that is like constantly raved about and has been on my list for a really long time, and for good reason. I don't know why my focus has been so much on habits recently, but I suppose it's just that time of year. And again, lots of useful information about forming habits and habits that stick, and just advice on how to do that, how to approach it. And the one thing I really liked about this book is it comes with so much actionable steps, so many actionable steps, and like worksheets that you can use afterwards. So I listened to it on Audible, probably, and actually it was while I was working on that pomegranate painting from my last video. I listened to the whole book in one sitting, and yeah, I found it really, really helpful, and I really liked afterwards then being able to have access to all these different worksheets, just with stuff that I can then implement going forward. I'm trying to decide if I want to shade the trees and then add some snow, or do I want to add the snow and then shade the trees. I think I want to shade the trees and then add snow, but I'm being really cautious, and I think I need to not. I need to be a bit braver, make some more daring brush strokes so that we can actually have some interest in this painting, because right now it's all a little bit flat. So then next up, quite recently, read A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, and that was recommended by one of you guys, so thank you very much. This was a recommendation based on the fact that I like quite a lot of Stephen King novels, and this was a great next step into like the horror genre. It's about I feel like I've really lost my way in like describing things that I've read. It's about a girl, a woman, who is remembering a time in her childhood where they believed her sister was possessed by a demon, and she's sort of looking back on a reality TV show that was made out of it, and just the effects on her family, and also the behind the scenes of what was happening in real life, because obviously this possession was being speculated about, and you know, the way that if we thought someone was possessed now and there was a reality TV show about their exorcism, everyone would be talking about it. And it's her look back on that as the younger sister of the person, the subject of this show. So it's a really, well, for me, I think it's a really original idea. It's a really original story idea and really well executed. You're always on your toes. You don't know really what's happening. There are some really scary parts, and also just an interesting look at the psychology of it, of a family that's desperate, and yeah, the end is quite interesting as well. Anyone that has read it will probably agree. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I would definitely recommend it to you guys if you're looking for something kind of spooky, but not too scary, just really interesting, really intriguing, and well done. It was really nice to read something so original and so different to stuff that I've read before. So thank you to whoever recommended that one to me. So I'll be checking out some more Paul Tremblay stuff in the future, in the near future probably. Did I mention that I read The Handmaid's Tale? I feel like I skipped over that one. It was kind of a big one. I read The Handmaid's Tale. I read it when I was at school and really didn't like it. I found it really boring. But this time around, I loved it. Oh my god, I really, really, I don't know what I was missing last time. Maybe I just wasn't old enough. And that is by Margaret Atwood, of course. And I love a post-apocalyptic, well, it's not even post-apocalyptic, I love a dystopian novel, and this is like one of the ultimate ones. So I really, really, really enjoyed that, and then I decided that I would watch the series, but I needed to wait a little bit between the book and the series. I didn't want to jump right into the series, but I have started the series now. We'll talk about that later. I'm also thinking about watching the what's the one? Little Fires Everywhere. That's on Amazon Prime as well. I might watch that, but that one I'm less interested in. Maybe once I'm done with The Handmaid's Tale and I'm looking for something else to watch. And then I read a book that I found on my library's app. I was looking for a new e-book. And I found one called A Life Less Stressed, The 5 Pillars of Health and Wellness by Ron Elric. And he is a dentist, but he is looking into sort of more of a holistic approach to health and wellness in general, and all the things that we could be doing to really optimize our health. And the 5 pillars are sort of like nutrition, movement, thought, our environment. So it really is quite a holistic view of everything. He talks about where our food is coming from, and just stuff like that. I found it a little bit woo-woo. It's kind of like the How Not to Die book that I read, I think again earlier this year, where there's a lot of really useful information, a lot of research, and a lot that I did take from it, but it also seems quite biased and quite like you're choosing certain studies to quote and maybe skewing the conclusion. Like, he talks a lot about how, what is it, correlation doesn't equal causation or something like that, but only when that works for the point that he wants to dismiss. But if he's making a point where he does want it to work, then it does. Like, correlation does equal causation. So while there's a lot, there was some stuff in there that I found useful. It was the kind of thing that I had to be quite wary with. Even just from the very beginning, there was a certain point where he was talking about how we're really quick to diagnose and medicate, and how the wellness industry or the medical industry is it really profits off like managing illness rather than treating it, rather than curing it, which I completely agree with. I think that's a really good point. Like treating symptoms rather than getting to the root cause. But then at the same time, as part of that point, he's saying that there are so many new illnesses that essentially don't really exist. And that kind of put me off a bit, like, because some of the examples he gives, I don't really agree with. At one point, and I'm not saying that he is saying these things don't exist, but at one point he said that, you know, we all get sad from time to time, but now if you get sad, you might be diagnosed as bipolar. And I thought that just gave me a bit of a gross feeling, honestly, to read that. Like, especially as a medical professional, I'm surprised that he would minimise a real thing like that much. So from then on, through while I was reading, I had to just take everything, just not take everything at face value. And I think when you're reading books like that, you have to do that anyway. But certain books that I read, I'm fact checking a lot more than I normally would. Yeah, some of the claims in there were quite extreme, but at the same time, there is some useful stuff in there. I wouldn't really recommend that book. I think another thing, like, the book is about managing stress. The first 2/3 of the book are just telling you what to be stressed about, just all the things you could possibly be stressed about. It's only when you get to the last third of the book that he talks about nutrition and stuff like that, like the actual 5 pillars that are in the title. The rest of it is like, hey, did you know that the environment is struggling and that people are suffering? It's like, yeah, I did. That's why I wanted to read this book and not be so stressed. So yeah, unfortunately, not really one to recommend, but some of the stuff in there I will take and implement into my life. There are a few things nutrition-wise that I'm going to think about, a few things I didn't know about. So in that sense, I'm still pleased to have read it. Also, if I'm not really enjoying a book too much, I'm very happy to skim through it. So I skimmed through that one quite a lot. And that actually got me, I don't know if that counts really, but that got me to my reading goal for the year, which was 30 books. Finishing that book got me to number 30. So I'm hoping that for 2021, I can read maybe, I'm going to aim for a book a week. I think I can do it. We'll see. But yeah, that's my final finished book so far. I'm now reading, what am I reading right now? I'm reading The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. That has been hugely recommended to me so much over the years, and that is, I'm still quite early on in the book, but it's sort of about creativity and embracing your creativity, letting yourself make mistakes and like be free with your work. I think a lot of people really swear by this book in terms of unleashing something in them, creativity wise. So far, I'm not that sure. Like Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert for me was that book, that like eye-opener that changed how I look at how I work and how I think about creativity and how I treat myself through my work. And this book has the same sort of message. I just think it's different strokes for different folks. I think the delivery of Big Magic connected with me more, but I can see why so many people have loved The Artist's Way, and I would recommend it. I'm still really early on, so we'll see how it goes. I'm sure there's a lot more for me to learn in there. And there's one other book I'm reading. Oh, it's called The Last Day. I don't know who it's by. I'll update you in my next one of these videos. But so far, and again, I don't know too much about it because it was just on my Kindle. Me and my mum share a library on Kindle, so anything that she's downloaded will show up on my Kindle as well. I don't even have a Kindle. It will show up on my Kindle app on my iPad. But it's so far about the world has stopped turning. It's set in the UK, or like just off the shores of the UK so far, on a rig. The world stopped turning like 30 years ago. So most of the world is in like darkness and cold, and it just doesn't really exist. But in like the sweet spot where it's not too cold all the time is England or the UK and a few other countries. And that's about as far as I am right now. I like the concept of it. I like the thought of like what that world would be like. So yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes, but I'm really like, I don't know, a couple of chapters in, so not too much has happened yet. And I haven't read a synopsis or anything, so I've got no idea where it's going and what it's supposed to be about, which I don't really like. Don't really like going into a book not knowing like what the vibe is. So at some point I'll probably have to do a bit more research on that one. So yeah, 30 books, possibly 32 by the end of the year. Out of those, my favourite this year, without a doubt, was Severance by Ling Ma, which is like, that's post-apocalyptic. And that was, I read that just as the pandemic was starting to spread here and around the world. And it really mirrors that so much, just the way an outbreak can appear and spread, and how our infrastructure struggles, but also how we try to carry on. It was just so, it was a bit too close for comfort at the time, but really well written, really amazing book. Also, it didn't turn out well in that book, so it wasn't great to be reading at the time, but yeah, I loved it. And I just love it's not zombies, but it's kind of like zombie, and I love that kind of thing. So yeah, it was just the perfect storm for me as a book. Definite reread for sure at some point. And it'll be interesting to see how I feel about it when this is all over and I feel less like in it. And then I've been watching quite a lot in Lockdown 2.0. We got Amazon Prime back because I haven't had Amazon Prime for a while. We decided, why not now? So we got Amazon Prime back, and we also got Disney Plus finally. So we've been catching up on Star Wars films. I think we have 2 left now, if you count Solo. So we just have the last Star Wars film and Solo, which I think is the last spin-off. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I'm not someone that like grew up watching Star Wars. Like growing up, the only Star Wars film I'd ever seen was The Phantom Menace, which apparently is the worst one, but I really liked it. So yeah, it's only since Ozzy and I have been together that he's sort of introduced me to the rest of the films. So I'm sure he really enjoyed it. I love that kind of film anyway. Yeah, I love the action and just great set pieces and everything. It's a good action flick. And we also watched The Incredibles 2, which was cool. It was nice to be back with The Incredibles. I feel like I haven't seen them in ages. So I'm looking forward with Disney Plus to like revisiting all the oldies, all the classics. Not that The Incredibles is really a classic, but I haven't seen Toy Story 4, and I don't know if I will. Yeah, don't know if I'm that interested. But I was never really huge on Toy Story. Ozzy loves Toy Story, so at some point, maybe. And then on Netflix, I watched a film called Searching, which is all set on like a computer screen, where this dad is trying to find his missing daughter, and yeah, it all takes place through the screen of his computer, which I thought might be kind of hard to watch, but you get used to it. I think they did it really well. The start of that film caught me by surprise. It was like an emotional roller coaster. It was like the start of Up, basically, and I wasn't expecting that. But overall, the film was lighter than I thought it would be. It was more like a TV drama than a like hard-hitting film. But yeah, I would probably rewatch that in a year or so, and I'd recommend it if you want sort of a mystery suspense. I finished Dark on Netflix as well, the German show that's all about time. And I don't want to talk about it too much because I really don't want to spoil it at all for anyone. But I loved it. I loved it so much. It's one of the best things I've watched all year. I think they did it all perfectly. I think they did it amazingly. I think the casting, of course, was incredible, like ridiculously good. the acting, just all of it. The story is so intricately woven. Even like after it finished, I went on YouTube just to look at like, I don't know, things you might have missed, and there were so many things that I missed. It's just so clever. It's like one of the most clever things I've ever watched. I was so impressed by it. It took a while for me to get into it, and I really didn't understand why so many people had recommended it to me. I thought, like, it's cool, but, you know, just your typical sort of Netflix show. And then it just went from strength to strength. And as soon as I finished that, I thought, I'm going to watch that again. Not yet, but I can't wait to rewatch that and just see all the things that I missed the first time. I also watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, and I say that in a sad voice because I really wanted to like it. I loved The Haunting of Hill House, and I know a lot of people have really liked The Haunting of Bly Manor as well, and I didn't mind it. I thought it was cool. I liked it. I watched the whole thing. I just had quite a lot of issues with it. I was quite bored most of the time. I feel like it was too long for its own good. I think it could have been done in like half the amount of episodes. Also, just to begin with, the accents threw me off so much. I think I just have a thing with bad accents in films and TV. So I found that really distracting. And I think I just was expecting more horror. I was expecting more scares. Like, the horror elements were really interesting. The stuff that they introduced, the backstories of things, I wished they'd done more of that, because for me it was all like so many monologues. There was so much talking in it, and I really wasn't that interested. I wasn't really invested in any of the characters other than Owen, the chef. I didn't really care that much, and so yeah, it was a lot of talking, and I wanted to see more scary stuff. But I know a lot of people have loved it and really enjoyed it. I think it just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. I just wish they did more with the spooky stuff. Like there's a sort of backstory episode where you find out about why the place is haunted, and that episode went on for so long, but also it explained things. It explained things that you'd seen, spooky things, but also, like, don't give me the backstory of a spooky guy that I saw for like half a second in one of the first episodes and haven't seen since. Like, it was interesting. It was interesting to know why that was there, and but if I'd seen more of that, if I was more invested in that side of it, it would have been a lot more interesting. So that was a shame for me. I really wanted to like that. I ended up watching the last 4 episodes in one sitting, really just kind of to get it done, and because I was still curious. I wanted to know what was happening and why, and what would happen in the end. But yeah, I was quite glad. I was quite glad to be done with that one, which is such a shame. I also watched The Keepers on Netflix, which has been out for quite a while now. It's a documentary series about, it starts with the murder of a nun, and over time, as you sort of delve deeper into the investigation into that, there's a lot of really horrible stuff going on at the school she works at, stuff with the priests and sort of how high up that goes. And I mean, you can kind of imagine what kind of stuff it is. It's really, really harrowing. It's really difficult to watch. There are some just terrible stories. But it's the documentary itself, I think, is really done well. And some of the people in this are just the most amazing people. There are some terrible, terrible people out there that you see in this documentary, but there are some really amazing people out there as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you can stomach it. I really do think it's quite a difficult watch, but it's worth it to hear these stories to know what's happening out there. And then the last thing that I've been watching, as I mentioned earlier, The Handmaid's Tale. And I saved this for last because I feel like I could go on about this forever. I am obsessed. I have not been so obsessed with a TV show for years. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just like the perfect storm of me being inside so much or just like needing something interesting. But oh my God, I love it. I love it so much. I think about it all day. Like, I'm looking forward to the end of my workday when I can settle down with a glass of wine and watch the next episode of The Handmaid's Tale. I'm watching it on Amazon Prime. I only found out yesterday that it's still going on. I was really hoping that there were just going to be 3 seasons and then I could sort of wrap it up. I'm just at the end. I've got one more episode of season 2 to watch and then I'm going to start on season 3 probably tonight. But I think I like how it's adapted from the book. I think it stays true to the themes of the book while like adding its own flair. I love the cinematography. I like that it doesn't completely copy the story of the book, but I still feel like that could have happened in the book. Just all of it. I love it. I'm obsessed. I think about it all the time. But I also, it might sound weird, but I really want it to end. I want it to end like soon so that I can just, like with Dark, it ended on a high. And I could just wrap it up and like be happy with how it went. I don't want this to be like a Grey's Anatomy that goes on forever until I just stop watching it and lose interest. But yeah, I think Elizabeth Moss that's a hard name to say. Elizabeth Moss does a great job, and I believe she produces it as well or something. She's like quite an integral part of the show, and what an amazing actress. Like really, I think the first season was a lot easier to watch because at least I kind of knew what was happening, but now it's gone a bit off-piste. It stresses me out. It stresses me out no end. But yeah, that's probably one of my highlights of this year, I think, like TV and film-wise. And I think we're almost done. This tree here, I think, needs to come forward because it's sort of getting lost, but then we'll leave it. But that is the magic of painting, especially like with gouache and things that you can layer. You can just adapt the environment to suit whatever it needs. Okay, I think we will leave it at that. I'm really happy with that. I think that looks quite all right. Nice wintry scene there. So I think that'll be it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for giving me someone to talk to. If you want to hang out for a bit longer, I do have a whole playlist of videos like this that I'll have linked on screen in a second. But otherwise, this may be our last video of 2020. I haven't figured it out yet. But if it is, I hope you have a great festive season. And I wish you all the best for the new year. And I'll see you then. Bye. Mm-hmm.